Here we are. We're watching the video to start with food.
And I'll take your receipts too. All right, so it's obvious that something is going on. So there are many and different ways to think about this particular video piece. So tell me what your impressions are. What are some of your impressions?
I came in at the very end, but it was very obvious that it was when he was on camera, was when he was suffering the great emotional distress.
Okay.
Because at one point you saw him go off camera and it was just fine, and then he came out and he saw the camera and it was like, ah!
Okay. So there's some relationship between his behavior and the camera.
Correct.
Other parts. What did you see? What did you notice? With the video, you missed that part. That's fine. You'll get caught.
Crying.
So there was a baby crying.
Yeah.
All right.
Nobody's attending to him.
Okay, so no one was attending to him.
We just had to read pages 1 through 68 of Adler's book, or not Adler, but anyway, Children of Challenge, Strikers. And self-soothing is important for a child to learn. So clearly he has to self-soothe. Repetitive behavior, assuming a different result, is not going to happen. But that's, I mean, thinking of all of the theories, philosophies. Otherwise, I thought it was a pathetic video, and I never want to see it again. I don't do well with children crying.
Okay.
I never understood the humor in it.
Okay.
So we're laughing, so did that bother you a little bit?
Well, I just wanted to throw a sandwich at it.
Yeah.
No. I ignore others.
So what about the video was disturbing? Like, why was the child crying disturbing? Because that's an interesting terminology.
Well, because to what goal? I mean, what was the purpose? There was no purpose or goal other than to watch a child cry, and I think that's purposeless.
Okay.
I think it's futile, and it's also cruel.
Okay.
In my assessment.
So why the child? So you specifically, I showed this video, you specifically zeroed in on the child. So you thought it was purposeless, you thought it was, what were some of the other
There
words?
was a female figure and a German shepherd that wandered through but had no response to the situation. It seemed like they just wandered through the room.
Okay.
Maybe there was a scary mask on the person that was taking the video. I have no idea. Because we don't see that. But something frightens the child, and then he throws himself on the floor. He doesn't seem horribly upset, but still, there's no reason for it. There's no purpose to have a child cry and throw himself on the floor.
Or was he looking for undue attention?
And I will disagree with you that there was no purpose.
Well, the filmmaker certainly had a purpose.
I think everybody in the situation had a purpose, right? So what do you think that the child's purpose was for acting the way he was acting or behaving?
He wasn't being attended to.
To send a message.
You're telling me what he wasn't doing. So he wasn't being attended to, so his behavior was trying to
send a
create
message.
someone to come help them.
Okay, to come help them, right? To
notice him
or to notice him. Okay.
Be with
so we're going to come back to some of basic premises.
Oh my God. He's
Right?
rolling.
Very funny to me.
Because, and this is the thing that's very interesting about humor in and of itself, right? So I took some comedy classes to learn how to be humorous, right? And so there are typically two reasons why we laugh at something. We laugh at something because an individual is smarter than us, and so we find that laughable. For example, the professor on Gilligan's Island, right? He can make like solar panels out of coconuts, but he can never make a boat to get them off the island, right? So we find that comical because we see them as being impractical. And then we also laugh at people who we believe we are smarter than, right? So we find their folly humorous, right? And so a little bit of that is happening in this video because some people find this very humorous because they've seen stuff like this in their actual lives and experienced children crying and all that kind of stuff. Does the child seem to be in real, and I mean real in terms of being physically harmed, being in some kind of immediate danger? Does he seem to have authentic cause for the response that he's giving?
No,
To you, he does not seem to have authentic.
not from what I have seen.
From what you saw, from what we saw here, and that's all we can take is from what we saw. So his inauthenticity
Is that your word? It's
inauthenticity is a word. I just did not pronounce it correctly.
I thought you created it.
No, I was not creating that word. Inauthenticity. His
Authenticity, isn't it?
so his authenticity is when he is being authentic, but
Yeah.
when he's not being authentic would be inauthenticity,
Okay.
which I'm not pronouncing correctly.
Yeah.
All right. We find comical, right? Because it seems that it's generated by him. So here are some truths about human behavior. People can learn, change, and grow. Right? Who I am today is not who I was at 17. Although I have the same genetic makeup, I've learned how to adapt and become more civil in my response to other people. People do what they think works even when what?
Even when it doesn't.
Even when it doesn't work, right? So the baby is exhibiting this behavior, and I believe that in layman's terms, he's faking it, right? But we'll talk about why in just a second, right? All human behavior is goal-directed. Everybody does something because they believe that it will get them to their goal, even if it what? Doesn't, right? So it working or not working doesn't have a whole lot to do with their goal-directed behaviors. And that attitude is a response to a goal. All right? What have you been taught about what an attitude is? What is an attitude? What's an attitude?
It's your belief.
It's your belief.
It's like, for me, it's a response to whatever's going on.
Okay? So it's a response to whatever is going on. Attitude.
What are your beliefs? Your attitude is your response belief system, isn't it?
Okay? So your attitude is your response belief system. All right. I taught high school for 8 years, and so I had to kind of break this kind of stuff down because teenagers have tons of attitude, right? And the problem with my students was that they were using their attitudes and they were trying these things that didn't work, and they were trying to achieve these goals but weren't clear what they were, and so they were having a lot of problems dealing with the outside world. And so what I had to educate them on what a true and authentic attitude is. So here's a quick story. So my dad is a pastor. And so on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. All right? So all day church on Sunday. I asked my dad to borrow the car Friday night. Because my dad loves me, what does he say?
No.
He says, yes, he
Oh,
loves
I
me,
know, it's
right?
a tough
love, I
Yeah.
know.
So my dad loves me. He tosses me the keys. I hang out with my friends. I get in the car. I have fun. I put gas in the car. I come back early before curfew. I give my dad the keys, and my dad says, I have what kind of an attitude?
Good.
I have a good or a positive attitude. What do I say about my father's attitude? That his attitude is also what? Good, right? So I have a good attitude, he has a good attitude. Sunday, my best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sundays?
All day church.
Church all day. But I'm feeling invincible and Jesus is my friend. So I go up to my dad and say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say?
No.
Not only does he say no, but he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell.
Oh,
Right?
God.
And so I say my dad has what kind of an attitude?
Bad.
A bad or a negative attitude. What does he then say about my attitude?
You have a bad
That I have a bad attitude. So wait a minute. Friday, we both had good attitudes. Sunday, we both have bad attitudes. What makes the difference?
Your perceived understanding of the situation.
And I would suggest that it starts with the G and ends in O's.
goals. So attitudes are goals, how you get your goals.
No.
No?
You dad.
Attitudes are responses
To the goal.
to goal
Okay.
achievement. So if you achieve a goal, and think about a teenager in your own life, right? A niece or a nephew, you deny them access to their goal, they have a bad attitude. But if they get their goal, they have a good attitude, right? And all too often we've tied attitudes to the emotional response that somebody has, but that doesn't give people enough information about how to change their attitude, right? It identifies it well enough, but it doesn't give a person a place to start and finish around what their attitude could be or should be, all right? And so when I encounter a person with a bad attitude, what do I know about them for sure? They're not meeting their goals, right? And so as a helper, I then have a two-pronged responsibility or two ways that I can help them. The first and the easiest is to do what? If I want to help them have a good attitude.
Find out what their goal is.
I don't need to find out what it is. What's my job? I'm a helper.
Help them achieve their goal.
Help them achieve their goal, right? So to help someone change their attitude, the easiest thing for them to do is as a helper to help them accomplish their goal. But what if the goal is not helpful to them or the community, that the goal is not reachable, they don't have the resources to do that? Then what becomes my responsibility as a helper?
Help them to change their goals.
I help them change their goals, right? And all too often as adults, particularly working with young people, is that we try to give them what their next goal should be, and what is that natural response to me telling you to do something or to be something, right? Pushback, reaction, negative attitude. You did the swivel of the neck thing, right?
I'm not going to do it, and you can't make me.
And you can't make me. You're not the boss of me.
Because I
Right?
hate to be told what to do.
I'm not gonna do
And
that.
that is
I'm a
because
humanistic believer.
people's attitudes aren't when they're not getting their goals. So, ultimately, from an Adlerian point of view, what ultimately are humans or people's goals? What are they trying to get? What was the baby ultimately trying to get according to Adlerian psychology?
Sense of belonging.
Community, yeah.
Here we go.
Significance, belonging, and safety. Right? So those are the three things that all of us in some way are striving for. And you know, when we think about addictions, we think about relationships, we think about even how we use and spend money, it's usually along these three lines. And we usually spend it inappropriately because we're trying to get this, or we spend it properly so that we can get these three things, right? So those things become tools for us to get this goal achievement. All right, does that make sense? All right, cool. So, Elizabeth, it's on an automatic play. Elizabeth, I want you to pass those papers out, and she's going to